Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Akakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations unto the 144,000. This is Brother Kyle here, back with another lesson through the spirit and power of Bahashim Yahushai. Lord willing to be edifying and on point. Right, this will just be a lesson, going into, basically being a soldier in the truth, and, basically taking up your cross, as the Lord would say. There's another scripture that has to come out, right? So I'll just give a quick, you could say, testimony of, something that recently happened. It had precursors to it, but, it happened today, on work, where this witch, she's literally a witch, because she does palm reading and all these things, and that demon basically trying to rise up against me and trying to get me fired from a job, right? So I'm not going to go into the full detail of the story, but that is the gist of it, all because she was reported for her improper behavior on work, natural nigger woman, loud, obnoxious. As the saying goes, empty barrel make the most noise. So you could imagine. So yeah, she didn't like it, so she decided to write a report with a lot of allegations and lies and all these different things. So now I'm under investigation due to that shit. But not worry, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, she will fall. So it just inspired this lesson here, as the scripture going to say. I'll read it and go into it. There's Luke 17:1. It says, "Then said he unto the disciples," he is Yahushai, "it is impossible, but that offenses will come. But woe unto him through whom they come." Right? So the Lord said, hey, offenses will come. Offenses will come. People will come and, they would say this, that, because I was even watching this video here with the elder, I just got finished watching it from his street preaching. Malicious Christians are on the move, and this guy, he didn't want to leave at all, but it is what it is. The Lord say in this, the love of many shall wax cold. It's just more and more demons going to be popping up, one after the next, so what did he say? But woe unto him through whom they come, right? So whoever bringing forth the offenses now, the Lord say woe unto them. The word woe means what? Destruction, right? So this demon who trying to come up against me and make me lose my job, hey, the Lord gonna pound it to powder, right? Verse 2 says, "It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones." The little ones is who? The Lord's elect, right? Or his prophets, So the Lord says it's better, and bigger millstone is, right? So the Lord said better that it happen than you offend, the Lord's prophets, So what she's doing, because she knows about the Hebrew Israelites, she's actually a scoffer as well, because in the earlies, right, she brought it up, and she was speaking about, she saw IUIC, she came in contact with IUIC in Trinidad here, and she was basically, she didn't stop and converse with them or whatever it is, but, she was hearing how they were speaking or whatever it is, and, she got offended, so she was talking and she was saying, all we do is harass people on the streets and blah, 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 and, and scoffing and, yeah, because she thinks, so many precepts come into my mind, so let me see if I could get them out. So this is Isaiah 65:2. Alright, I'll read this one first before the other one, alright? It says, "I have spread out mine hands all the day unto a rebellious people, which walketh in a way that was not good, after their own thoughts." Right? Because what the Lord had was to say about that. When you go to the book of Jeremiah 17 and verse 9, right? It says what? "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Right? And as we know here, as we always preach, the heart goes back to your mind, because they won't be talking about your literal heart, because the literal heart is just an organ that pumps blood. So when I say your heart or soul, it goes back to your mind. Right? So it's saying your mind is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Right? That's why it's always important to walk in the spirit of the Lord, because your mind will be telling you, yeah, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, But within your spirit, you know that, hey, that's not right. So that is why it's said desperately wicked, because it's seeking to go after the world. Remember this, your mind, it constantly gaining knowledge of the world and things that going on in the world, which is just mainly wickedness. So that is what it will seek after, right? But your spirit, right? Your spirit was supposed to be on point with the Lord, That is what you ought to follow. So let me go back here. It goes down in verse 3, Isaiah 65. It says, a people that provoked me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifice it in gardens and burn it incense upon altars of brick, which remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, right? Because funny enough, that bitch was eating, pork yesterday, with the sausage and all them nonsense, and she claimed to be, a woman of the Lord. And I just laugh, because a woman of the Lord could never be so loud, obnoxious, and rude and all these things, What the scripture say? Let me just get that quick. This is Sirach 26 and 14. It says, a silent, you hear the first thing? A silent and loving woman is a gift from the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. Why the woman mind has to be instructed? It had to be instructed by the man, right? Because we know the man is the leader, right? And the way how that demon acts, right? And you could tell by her status and all these things, she craves a relationship, right? But the funny thing is, use a woman, I believe in she 40s or whatever it is, with 6 children, loud, obnoxious, ignorant, arrogant, have no sort of education to see, just walk around making a certain noise and talking loud for no reason, and feel as though like, you would so much, not to mention, not to be carnal, but she ugly as hell. Ugly as hell, missing teeth. Is like, bruh, if only I could have shown a picture, but I'm not gonna go through all of that. But it's just funny, So I'll read this again. Sirach or Ecclesiasticus 26 and 14. A silent and loving woman is a gift from the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed, right? Because remember the scriptures say, who can find a virtuous wife, or a woman, which is practically the same thing, because we know in this time in here that, hey, is a bunch of wickedness going on. So it's like, for you to find a virtuous woman, you have to be lucky, But we know we need time in grace period here. Everybody comes from different walks of life and whatnot, right? But she nowhere near close to silent nor loving, and she think that she's a woman of the Lord, right? So when we go back here to the Salaki is actually the same thing here. When we go back to the Isaiah 65, it goes on. I'll read over verse 4. It says, which remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh and brought of abominable things in their vessels. Right? It says, which say, this is her. Right? This part is her. It says, which say, stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou. This is her attitude, right? Because even before, right, when her and I would have conversate, like before we wasn't bickering or anything, like we was actually cool, and I get to find out certain things, that's how I know she would have talked about scriptures, whatever, and Me being a man, I will rattle off scriptures off from my head and all these different things too, you know. And she always used to give off that vibe. That is why I distanced myself from her, you know. And then get to find out all this afterward that, she's practically a witch and all these different things, you know. So the Spirit of the Lord is thing because, I mean, hey, the truth does come to the light, right? So she does, speak as though, because she always showing shade, talking about, she take all her problems to God and all this and that. So in my mind, I was like, okay, well, it's like the story of Elijah then. You worshiping Baal, I worshiping the true power, Yahweh Bashimi Oshai. Let's see who answer by fire, you know? And I know for a fact, 100% true, that my power, the God that I serve, Yahweh Bashimi Oshai, who the world ignorantly calls Jehovah and Jesus, right? The God that I serve is the true power, right? And she being a mocker, a scoffer, and a loud and ignorant woman, she gonna get her downfall, right? But it's just a lesson to learn, because as the scripture we read in Luke 17, offenses will come. So it's like a sense of affliction, right? So it goes on. It says, these are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day, right? So the Lord said there's a smoke in the nose, and you know how it is. When smoking your nose, it is thing, your cough thing, whatever it is, because it's unpleasant. The Lord don't like that. So a woman like that, the Lord don't like, right? Which will also lead me to this scripture here, because what she doing is being, a demon, as I said. This is Psalms 105 and 15. Let me see if I could go and put this up here. I'll read from 14. It says, he suffered no man to do them wrong, yea, he reproved kings for their sakes, saying, touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Right? So what's she doing? She touching the Lord's anointed and doing his prophets harm. Because what she trying to do, because why? You cannot take reproof for your improper behavior on a job. Right? Everyone acts accordingly to the work that they're given. They try to carry out their job. Of course, you will have little hiccups here and there, who not in the mood to work, and those are things that naturally come. But every day you want to be acting loud and talking like nobody could tell you what to do and all these different things. That is not what they come here for. If that is not what you came here for, better let's stay home, right? So if it is, you can't take the reproof for that, right? You feel as though, you holier than everybody, Jesus doesn't say your prayers. Well, by all means, you could think whatever the hell you want, right? And you might feel as though, you're getting through right now, but I know through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shmi Oshai, he will bring me through this, and I'll come out successful on top. Because it's not the first time an offense like this came, but at the end of the day, it's like you're making me look bad too as well, because you're trying to make it seem as though that is something that I'm doing, right? Which is the allegation that you brought up on all these different things, right? So it is what it is, as the saying goes, who laugh last, laugh the best, right? So I'm going to read this precept here. This is Sirach 4 and 28. The Lord say, watch, strive for the truth unto death, and the Lord shall fight for thee. Right? So the best thing I could do, is keep on going, trusting in Yahweh Shimi Oshai, that he'll bring me out of this battle, successful, and a demon like that, she gonna get brought down. She gonna get brought down. She not gonna succeed in nothing. Right? She not gonna succeed in the name of Yahweh Shmi Oshai. She will fall. Right? So I also wanted to go into this here. Right? This is 2 Timothy 2 and verse 1. The subheading for the KJV says, be strong. Subheading for the NLT says, a good soldier of a Mashiach Yahushai. So it goes on in the KJV, verse 1. Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Hamashiach Yahushai, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Hamashiach Yahushai, right? Or Yahushai Mashiach. So this is the ultimate goal here, Me now, right, as well as other brothers who may be going through the same thing, or even sisters, we have to endure hardness as a good soldier, right? Because everybody have their fight, demons attacking from every angle. As I always say, is a serious fight, because demons attacking you within your mind, they're attacking you through other people, or they're just naturally plaguing you. Like you're trying to do something, and it's like it's just fighting you down. So it's like from every angle. Then you have Esau, looking to bring out the devices and all these different things. But hey, that's why the Lord say endures hardness as what it say? I'm not butcher it. Endure hardness as a good soldier, right? Because these things had to come. Remember, these things made to it created to make us stronger, right? Let's prove that. I'll bring two precepts. One of my favorite chapter, Sirach 2. In verse 1 it says, my son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. Right? We have to prepare our mind for temptation, the things that would arise. Set thine heart aright and constantly endure. We just read it, right? Endure hardness as a good soldier. So we have to endure everything that's coming. It said, and make not haste in a time of trouble. Right? And this what we living in right now is just the tip of the iceberg. The real trouble inside of come here, because this trouble talking about what? Jacob's trouble. Right? So when it says make not haste, means not don't run away. Right? It says cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. That is what we want to be. We want to be increased. We want to be, part of the 144. Lord willing, now part of that number. Right? And what the Lord said? Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a low estate. So, all these things that coming upon me right now, hey, I taking it cheerfully. Cause I know at the end of the day it's afflictions, chastisement, all these things, right? And I just had to be patient as how I've been changed to a low estate right now. Because of course right now, I looking bad, as if I really did something like that. Only few people know the truth, but the majority, people will believe anything. But the Lord said be patient. Because why? For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Right? So the Lord, as the scriptures say, the men of the Lord are comparable to gold, to fine gold. Right? What do you do to make gold become more valuable? You put it through the fire to purify, to burn out all the impurities, for you to get that shine, that glimmer. That's why it's acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Right? We know a furnace is fire, is heat. So how would you become an acceptable man? Going through that fire of adversity. Right? All the things that coming upon us. We had to take that and, basically go through with it. Right? Believe in him and he will help thee. Order thy way aright and trust in him. And that is what we had to do. Ye that fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, and go not aside, lest ye fall. Right? We had to wait for the Lord. Zephaniah 3:8. Wait ye upon me till I rise up to the prey. Verse 8 it says, he that fear the Lord, believe him, and your reward shall not fail. Ye that fear the Lord, hope for good, and for everlasting joy and mercy. Now there's our next key part here. Look at the generations of old, and see, did ever any trust in the Lord, and was confounded? Or did any abide in his fear, and was forsaken? And whom did he ever despise that call upon him? And the answer for that is nobody, right? Every person that ever trusts in the Lord or abide in his faith or call upon his name, the Lord, the Lord answer them. The Lord help them out. The ones who was true and sincere in this stand, as a real man of the Lord or a real sister of the Lord, the Lord answered them. The Lord was in their favor. Verse 11 says, "For the Lord is full of compassion and mercy and long suffering, and very pitiful, and forgiveth sins, and saveth in time of affliction." Right? So the Lord saveth in the time of affliction. So hey, I believe and I trust in Yahweh, share that you'll bring me out of this, bring me out on top. So I just had to be patient, and let the Lord deal with it. Because honestly, I wasn't shocked about it. I didn't know exactly what it is the person was going to bring up, because they've been bragging about, they're going to write a long ass report to try and get me fired. So I knew about that, but I didn't know exactly what it is they was going to write. So that's why I wasn't shocked, but it was funny because it's like, you have nothing on me, so it's like, the best thing to do is just create a lie, So that's another thing. You're supposed to be a woman of the Lord, right? Supposedly, right? But you don't know one of the commandments, right? One of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness, But hey, we know it's just fun and games with these demons. They want to feel as though they know something, and then it's like, they know nothing. The scripture said that if a man thinketh himself to be something, he's a fool. A matter of fact, let me bring that out. This is Galatians 6:3. It says, "For if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself." Right? So she just fooling herself thinking she's actually something, because everyone could clearly see that she knows nothing. She's just a clamorous woman. She just loud and obnoxious. I'll keep on using that phrase because that's literally what she is. Everyone could clearly see that she has no kind of, sense in that brain of hers. She just talks loudly for no reason, and make it seem like nobody could tell her anything, and people would fear her and all these different things. But really and truly, just making yourself look like an ass. You make yourself look like an ass. But it is what it is. If that's your lot, that's your lot. So let me go back to the 2 Timothy here and goes to verse 4. It says, "No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who had chosen him to be a soldier." Right? So I'm not going to bother to tangle up myself with the affairs of this life. My job is to appease the wrath. Well, I quoted Sirach 38 and is it 19 or 20? Sirach 39 actually. Sirach 39 and 20. Right? With spirit creative for vengeance and whatnot. But yeah, my job is to please the Lord. Do what he asks. And by me following the Lord's statutes and commandments to the best of my ability, going out and preaching the word, making videos and whatnot, me being obedient to the Lord, I know the Lord would fight for me, because she not being obedient to the Lord, she just being a demon straight up. Right? Because you're a witch, because you're doing palm reading and all these things, you're bearing false witness, you're not taking reproof, you're a loud and obnoxious woman, which is against the scriptures, and so much more. The Lord said, "Do no and prophets no harm." You're doing just that. So that's 5 things already. Right? And there's so much more. So hey, she could keep on continuing. Right? She would see the more things that she does is the more further she would sink. Simple as that. Let me see here. I'll drop that here. Let me just get this last precept here. This is Revelation 3 and verse 10. It says, "Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation. Now we know that's going into the MOTB and whatnot, right? In that time, they say, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth, right? So, and I know for damn sure she gonna end up taking that shit. But that's neither here nor there. Verse 11 says, behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. So the Lord commanding us to keep hold of this truth, you know, that somebody like that demon would be able to take my crown away. You know, again, Lord willing, I'm part of that number, right? So I hold fast, you know, and brothers, you know, who might be going through the same thing or something similar, you know, because, you know, we fight these demons daily. Hey, they are the ones how to be held in fear, not us, you know. So, hey, with that, I hope this lesson was edifying, you know, inspiring, you know, faith boosting to you brothers and sisters out there. Until next time, say shalom. And a bad babal to that bitch and this will shalom.